Hello everybody, how are you guys? We're here in the Berg, Steel City, on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. It's so nice out. It's sunny, it's cool, that not quite the crisp coolness of fall quite yet, but not hot. And that is a beautiful thing. It's a little warm, when you get in the sun, but starting to get that crisp fall air. You can tell the leaves haven't quite started to change with vigor yet, but we're getting there. Guys, this video is a video about a community here in Pittsburgh, a series of videos we've done on communities in the area, and this is about the Southside Flats. That's right, the Southside Flats. And an interesting thing, and I didn't even know anything about this. I was doing my laundry, and a lady next to me heard me talking to my agent about these videos, and she said, "You have to do one on the Southside Flats." I go, "What's the heck's a Southside Flats?" And I don't know if she's a historian but I forgot to ask her, but she seems like a local. She was wearing a t-shirt that said Southside Flats High School, class of 71, so she's got some years on her, guys. And usually people that are a little older know the history of the area pretty well, so let's go with it. She said that Southside Flats is, of course, on the south side of the river. I say of course because I'm a native, so I should explain for people that have never been here. There's three rivers in the area. The one that's on the southern edge of Pittsburgh is called the Monongahela River. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing it, and on the other side of that, meaning the south side of the river, is the Southside Flats. So the river bed or river bottom is flat, and then it goes up into these hills that we're in now. I'm up on the top of the hills, I guess. I don't really know how to describe it, but what's interesting about the Southside Flats is that one of the original soapbox derbies ever was held on these hills going into the Southside Flats. So the racers would go down the hills that we're on now, and you'll get a better picture of it as we go down the hill, and then ramp out, or just let it run out on the Southside Flats. Now, if you're not sure what that soapbox derby cars back in the day, I don't even know if they still do it, but kids would build their own race car without engines, out of wood or whatever, and then race them just using gravity down hills. So you'd set them right next to each other on a hill, and then go, and then they'd slowly pick up speed, and whoever had designed the best race car within the confines of the rules won. Okay, soapbox derby. And of course, Pittsburgh being a very old, very traditional town, that was very big here back in the day. And we're talking I think soapbox derby probably started in the 30s, 40s, right in there, 50s. And had its heyday probably through the 70s, 80s. And of course, Akron, I think, is where the soapbox derby championships are held every year. So what's interesting about that here regarding the Flats is that the Flats is not as long as you think. And there were more than a few kids that went flying off the end of the Flats. So picture this. You got a young kid, a 12-year-old kid, 10-year-old kid. They're in their soapbox derby car. They go down the hill. In this case, it's Arlington Avenue, okay? They go coming down the hill. They're going like 200 plus miles an hour onto the flat portion, in this case, the Southside Flats. And they're going so fast, guys. In those days, they didn't, and the cars don't have brakes. You want to make it as light as possible, as speedy as possible. And they thought they had enough room to run out the cars. Well, a lot of times they did, but a couple of times, these cars were so well designed, so effortlessly quick, that the kids went flying off the end of the Southside Flats into the river. And so they eventually had to put a rescue boat out in the river to rescue the kids that went flying off the end of the Southside Flats going 200 plus miles an hour in their Soapbox Derby car. Unbelievable. And then eventually they allowed a rule that you could redesign your car. You would get extra points if you designed your car to be able to float on the river. So, in other words, if you were a young kid and you were going down, so look, this is what they would do. They'd go flying. This is one of the hills that they'd go flying down. So picture this: you're like 12 years old in 1945. You go, no, all the way down this hill, guys, and you're going over 200 plus miles an hour in your car. And it's rattling, it's holding on, it's like around the curve, like this. And you are picking up speed like anything. You did your best to make sure the welds were all tight, that the bolts were all tight. But guys, the roads back then were not near as smooth as this, and so your Soapbox Derby car is rattling. And when you come out down here on the flat part, you are moving over 200 plus miles an hour, and you would go flying into this flat part, basically gripping onto the steering wheel so tight you bent the metal, or you would crack the wood on the steering wheel because the fear was running through your body, the white fear of coming down. Remember, you're like 10, 11, 12 years old. You're going down this hill in a wooden car with no brakes. I mean, picture that. But you don't want to disappoint people. You don't want to disappoint your dad who helped you build the car. So even though you're scared out of your wits, you continue down this hill. You're going over 250 plus miles an hour now. And then you come to the flat part. Well, what happens? You go about 3 miles down the Southside Flats running out to speed. Well, what happens if you run out of Southside Flats? You go flying into the river. And that's exactly what happened. These kids would go flying into the river. So finally they changed the rules. They said, look, if you can make your car go down the hill and float, we'll give you extra points. So even if you lose, you may win. And that created a firestorm. See, look, you're coming down here. Shoom! Right? And here's the flat part right here. They'd go flying down this flat part, guys. It's 250, 300 plus miles an hour at the age of 11 years old in a wooden car that they built in their garage. And that's just the way they did things back in those days. But that was also the days of good workmanship, good tools. The bolts and the screws and the pieces of wood, everything was top quality. It's not like now. Everything breaks. You can barely find a good wrench anymore. So everything was held together pretty well, and the problem was they were made together so well they sunk. So a couple of these kids lost their cars that they worked on for like 2 years. So that's why they modified the rules. If you can make the car float, we'll come and pick you up in our rescue boat, and then you can continue. It'll give you some extra points, and then you can continue to race. Well, guys, that's just a snapshot of the Southside Flats, and you got to come to Pittsburgh. That's all there is to it. Come to Pittsburgh and enjoy this weather before it changes to a Pittsburgh winter, and then things go wrong, and then it's a whole different story. All right, talk to you.